What's up, everybody, and welcome back to The Hum, a Kansas Hoops podcast via the Field of 68. I'm Sam Lance, and I'm with Jackson Bezdek, and we have a special episode today because it is episode 50, the big 5-0 here on The Hum. So with that, I just kind of wanted to say thank you to everybody who's been listening to us since the beginning, and even if you're a newbie and you've been listening to us this season, thank you so much. We've really picked it up this season as far as the viewership goes. So I just wanted to say thanks. Thanks for being on this ride with us, talking about Kansas basketball.
It's been a fun ride, man. It's something that, I'm busy. You're busy. We work, we do a lot of things, but this is always like one of the most fun things of my week, something I look forward to. Just talking KU hoops, man. There's nothing better. Shout out to Jeff Goodman, Rob Doster for giving us 50 episodes, me and you to on their platform. Like that's pretty crazy that they gave us that. And more than 50 is coming up. We're gonna have a lot more coming, and yeah, just thank you to everybody. It's cool to, go onto the Field of 68 page and see our shows doing well. We really appreciate that.
Yeah, I can't believe they let us do it for this long, Bez, but we're still
Yeah.
here, we're still kicking. So let's go ahead. Let's get in today's episode. Today we're discussing Kansas's first loss of the season on the road to Creighton, and then we'll quickly preview Missouri coming right up next. All right, Bez, of course, in the last episode of The Hum, we talk about how Kansas might go undefeated in the non-conference. We talk about how they're playing well. We talk about how, you shouldn't get upset about the DeJuan Harris, KJ Adams, Hunter Dickinson pairing and there being no floor spacing and all those complaints. We put those to bed. We were like, you don't have to worry about that. Kansas isn't going to lose. And then Kansas goes on the road to Creighton and falls 76-63. Everything that we said just went right out the window, just like that. Kansas just really couldn't get anything going offensively. We'll talk about kind of how Creighton guarded Kansas here in a little bit, but that trio for Creighton, the veteran trio of Pop Isaac, Stephen Ashworth, and Ryan Kalkbrenner scored 61 of Creighton's 76 points, which was just two less than what KU scored for the game. And Creighton rolled for a big-time win, a win that Creighton, as a program, really needed over number one Kansas. Second time Creighton has beaten a number one in back-to-back years. Bez, just kind of general thoughts before we get into some takeaways.
Yeah, I mean, just to go back to your point about, DeJuan and KJ Hunter might have looked like an issue against Creighton. Rylan Griffin's out, and he's a huge part of why that wasn't looking like an issue because he's an extra floor spacer out there. So Kansas loses that element to it. That obviously hurts. And Kalkenbrenner is, one of the very few guys who can match Hunter and exactly what Hunter does, and can even on some nights, like we saw, give you a little more than what Hunter will give you, especially on the defensive side of the ball. So, that's a tough matchup for Kansas, especially with no Rylan Griffin. But I'm still not hitting the panic button on those three we talk about.
Yeah, I'm not hitting the panic button either, and it's just because of this simple fact. Creighton needed this game, and Greg McDermott coached his ass off to win this game. Let's just kind of talk about a little bit of how Creighton guarded Kansas. I mean, Creighton just packed the paint. They said, you know what? We're not going to let Hunter Dickinson beat us. We're not going to let any of these guards just drive straight at us, get downhill. They packed the paint. They switched up looks. They went to some matchup zones, and they completely sagged off DeJuan Harris and KJ Adams. There's a picture, and I'm going to find it. I'm going to put it up right now on this episode. I'm going to put it up here of Hunter Dickinson with the ball, or I think he's about to get the ball passed to him. And you can just see just how awful the spacing was and how Creighton was super packed in. And doing this, it filtered Kansas to take shots that they don't want to take. Kansas in this game, they finished 8 for 18 on layups. It's not great. They shot 8 of 23 from three. Not exactly great. But that also means that with that, Kansas took 29 shots from the mid-range. Kansas went 9 of 29 on those shots. That's just not a recipe to win any game, Bez.
No, it's 2024. You can't take 30 mid-ranges in a game. That's ridiculous. No, I still like the mid-range shot in times, you know. I don't think it should be a layups three-pointers game like we see in the NBA, you know. That's kind of that product is I don't think as great as college has been this year, but 29
Why?
mid-ranges? That is a crazy amount. And it's kind of, but you have to take what the defense gives you. And that's what Creighton was giving Kansas. Knock yourself out with those mid ranges. You know, 9 for 29 from 14 to 17 feet. That's not, I can't believe they only lost by 13, to be honest with you.
Yeah, Mike Vernon in his newsletter prior to the game, I didn't read it before the game started, but one of my big takeaways during the game was like, Kansas just is taking a lot of questionable shots. Like these mid-range shots aren't really shots that we've been seeing on a consistent basis all year. And apparently Mike wrote about in his newsletter that Creighton really kind of filters you into taking those mid-range shots, and Creighton actually allows the most mid-range shots in the country. So shout out Mike Vernon for that fact. Kind of just shows you what Creighton does, and they did a great job against Kansas doing that. Because of it, Hunter Dickinson. I mean, this is the stat of the game that everybody's talking about. Hunter Dickinson, 4 field goal attempts. DeJuan Harris, 21 field goal attempts, the most DeJuan Harris has attempted in his career. I believe he's had a game where he's shot 18 shots and a game where he's shot 16 shots. And besides that, he's had 10 games where he's shot over 12 shots in a game. And he had 12 shots at halftime, Bez. What's just kind of your take on this happening? DeJuan Harris dominating Kansas shot chart.
No, yeah, that Dewan's played a lot of games. So the fact that it is only 10, you know, that should tell you all you need to know. And like another thing about Creighton defensively, they're last in the country in fouls. Like they're not going to foul you either. You're not getting to the line really against Creighton. So that kind of a lot of those layups, you know, Kansas is looking for a foul. Usually they're going to get fouled on this type, not against Creighton. You're not going to get that. So that's another reason you get funneled out there. I, I don't even, it's so bizarre because were they really packing it every single time against Hunter? First half, yes, it really felt like it. But second half, I didn't feel like it as much. And still, I don't think Kansas, he was just not a factor, just not a factor at all. But like I said earlier, I think that really only happens against a Kalkenbrenner. And I'd have to look into the Big 12 and really decide who I think could do it in the Big 12. But I don't think there's more than 2 teams in the Big 12 that are going to be able to replicate what Creighton did. So if teams want to go off of what Creighton did to guard Kansas, yeah, that's great. It worked very well. But I don't think you're going to have the personnel or, you know, the team defense is pretty good over there right now. Like they've struggled to start the year, but that's a very sound defensive unit we just watched.
Yeah, I mean, you got the 3-time Big East Defensive Player of the Year and Kalkbrenner back there. I mean, you're probably going to take some shots that you don't necessarily want to take. Like Zeke Mayo, there are a lot of times in this game where he threw up a floater instead of maybe getting to the basket and getting fouled because he's scared of Kalkbrenner. The one thing that worries me, Bez, is I think that Creighton kind of laid out the formula a little bit to what teams could try to do to slow Kansas down. And I mean, let's be honest, what Creighton did looks very similar to last year.
Mm.
How things were looking, it's a little bit concerning, but again, having Rylan Griffin out was very
Right.
noticeable in this game. If you have somebody to kick it to with the defense collapsing like a Rylan Griffin, that helps out a lot. And that was kind of put on DeJuan's shoulders in this game. DeJuan was the guy that had to take those shots, those wide open 3-pointers. And I'll tell you this, I don't think DeJuan Harris is going to shoot that poorly again this year. I really don't. I think if he has open looks, he's going to hit them around 40% of the time. So let's talk about these wings, Bez. We talked about them a little bit in the last episode, saying that the steps are kind of taking place. We need them to get to really where they're comfortable, that next step. What do you think of AJ Storr in this game? I thought AJ was good for stretches, but it was just an overall interesting game from him.
Yeah, I those stretches I really liked what I saw out of him. You saw a little bit of what he did at Wisconsin last year. And that's a game where, look, a month from now, 2 months from now, AJ needs to be getting 21, 22 in that game if Kansas is going to have a chance. Like, that's a game, if you're going to pack the paint against Hunter and say Rylan is, or someone like Rylan isn't playing, and you're losing that stretching the floor ability, AJ, you got to go one on one. You're going to have to go get buckets. Now, I last night or against Creighton was not a great example of what I think he can do. I think he can be way better in that role. And I don't know if he was really expecting that. I don't even think he's really 100% comfortable in the system yet. I think him and Zeke have not figured out how to play with each other at all. It just feels like they're taking turns, Sam. That's what it feels like. And, when you get to a point where you have a lot of talent on the floor, that's the one thing you have to avoid is, oh, now I got to feel like he's got to go for 2 or 3 possessions because I just took a shot. No, you have to be able to play within each other, and they're not there yet.
Bez, I'll ask you this because there's some discourse on this in the Discord
Hmm.
after the game. What in your eyes right now is AJ Store's role, and what do you think it should be or will develop into this season? Because I think that might be kind of where it lies right now. Like I don't know if AJ Store knows exactly what his role is on this team.
Yeah, I was really thinking hard for an answer, and I don't have one. I mean, I think he's kind of getting played into what the other wings are doing, and it kind of feels like they're all doing the same thing, where they're mostly catching and shooting, but every once in a while Zeke will go shoot a floater, every once in a while Rylan or drive, or AJ will go in strong for a couple possessions. But for the most part, it feels like they're just kind of rotating around the perimeter and all kind of doing the same thing, which they all have way different skill sets. So it's just like what I want to see AJ develop into is not be in the corner being a catch and shoot guy. He's fine at that, but his best asset is like his athleticism and his ability to get downhill.
Yeah.
So these like get down the hill on a ball screen, AJ. Like I think he's very good at doing that. And he's really good in transition. We've seen that multiple times this season already. Like that just goes to show what he can do going to the basket. And I just don't think there's enough of that with trying to post Hunter up all the time. He's not able to do that. He's just straight up not able to.
Yeah, I think getting to a point where Kansas is consistently running actions for Store, getting downhill is whenever we'll really kind of see him take off. I mean, the stretch that I think of in this game that was really positive for Store, he scored like KU's last 9 points, I believe, before the under 12 timeout. And then after the under 12 timeout, Kansas went to him again. They kind of ran that, clear out play. He comes around the screen and drives on the weak side. And he missed that shot, if you remember. But then Hunter Dickinson grabbed that, cleaned it up, and put it in. That was one of his four shots of the game there. And it was at that point, Kansas trimmed the lead to 5. It was 58-53 Creighton. Uh, and then what do you think happens, Bez? We go away from AJ Store.
No,
Harris, DeJuan Harris, and KJ Adams both have layup opportunities. They miss them. Creighton spurts off on another 7-0 run because of it, and like a minute and 15 seconds, and boom, instead of 58-53, it's 65-53. And that was pretty much the game right there. Pop Isaacs, I'm pretty sure, made a couple big 3-pointers in that stretch. And just really quick, man, what a game from Pop Isaacs because uh, coming into this game, he was shooting like 28% or under 30% against Kansas in his career. And he was like, you know what, that's not happening again. I'm just going to go off. And he did. But whenever Kansas went away from AJ Store, things kind of started going bad. I mean, I just think that Kansas needs to get to a spot where AJ Store is your first or second best player because I think that's whenever the ceiling of this team is going to be reached.
I couldn't agree more, Sam. That just has to happen. When they're in a one-on-one situation, I trust AJ Store with the ball more than I trust Zeke Mayo. I think there's a little too much Zeke right now, which not the worst thing in the world. He had a great first half, I thought. I thought he played really well in the first half. And then I thought he didn't come out of the locker room in the second half. Straight up, I just thought he played one half basketball, called it good. I thought he was terrible in the second half. Kansas was terrible in the second half. They're just not there yet. That's my whole point of there's no flow with these wings right now. And even with Ryland not playing, you think, okay, maybe this opens it up a little more. They're both starting. They're both going to be no. It just didn't look like that. Part of that, credit to Creighton, like you said, they had a great game plan, executed it perfectly. But it's like our schedule's brutal, dude. There's no time to like figure this out of like, okay, we got three G5s in a row. Let's get this Zeke AJ thing. No, you got to get it figured out now. You're running out of time because the Big 12 play is starting in a couple weeks.
Yeah, I'm a slightly concerned on Zeke Mayo, the whole Zeke Mayo thing. Like, can Kansas rely on him this year? Because I think Kansas kind of really needs him to be that dynamic combo guard that will score, 12 to 15 points a night. Uh, 19 against Howard, 21 against UNC. Since then, Bez, Zeke Mayo really hasn't been that much of a factor. I mean, 6 points against Michigan State. I will say in that game, he had 10 rebounds and 7 assists. So he played a pretty good game there, but 7 points against Oakland, 10 against UNCW, 12 against Duke, 7 against Furman, 12 against Creighton. I think Kansas is going to need a little bit more out of Zeke Mayo, but I don't know if Zeke Mayo is necessarily is somebody that you can rely on to get you 15 points per game at this level. I may be wrong, Bez. What's just kind of your take on that?
I just I really don't know yet if he can be a guy. I just don't know yet. He hasn't
It's
played
got to
enough
be
games.
Dickinson and Store. I really think it does. That's got to be
I,
your top two this year.
AJ came from the Big Ten, and I touched on this heavily in like the second episode of this season. Dude, Zeke hasn't played in enough of these big games to like rely on him. Like he can get you 20. He can have great nights. He's a great player, but I don't think he's ready to be Kansas's number one option, especially when you have other options that aren't a drop off talent wise from Zeke. AJ
I don't
Squares,
even
Zeke
think number
Mayo.
two at this point. Number two, I think a solid number three is where Zeke needs to be. Like a
I'd be great
solid.
with that. I'd be great with that. He's going to get a lot of open threes, and he's going to have his time to where he can create something on his own. He'll get a ball screen every now and then. That's fine for your number three. Kind of like a Jalen Wilson, like how he was on that championship team, with obviously a different type of player, but that same kind of role where like you're still going to get your time, but hey, Jalen went to be a great rebounder as a third option. Zeke can be a great playmaker, just like Dwan. They can play off each other so well. Let AJ get a ton of the scoring bulk. Let him go to work because I think he is ready for that. But I mean, the main thing right now is like I think the Hunter part of it because even against Furman, man, like these last three games, this wasn't like Kalk shut him down. Props to Kalk. Could have seen that come in. I don't know. Dickinson 3 games in a row has not looked like Hunter Dickinson.
Yeah. I'm not gonna lie, I got a lot of texts from friends during this game, kind of saying that Hunter Dickinson was a little soft. I'm not gonna come out and say that. I think Hunter Dickinson's a great player, but I mean, yeah, there needs to be. I think Hunter Dickinson is kind of allowing himself to take a back seat a little bit.
Feels like it.
He's kind of allowing these other guys to put in the bulk of the work, and I think Bill Self needs to have a conversation with them like, hey, you're still Hunter Dickinson. We
I
still
think
need
everyone's
20.
doing that.
You still need 20 and 10 out of you. Like this is what our team is built on. I'm gonna go back to it again. I think for this team to be as good as we think it is, it's gonna have to be led by Hunt, getting that 15 to 20 and 10, and then Store's got to be right behind him with about 15, and then Zeke Mayo, if he can score 12 as that third option, really combo guard type of guy, I think everything else will kind of play itself out from there. But those are the three. Those are the three guys you need to be putting in buckets every night. And whenever you get a game where Zeke Mayo and Hunter Dickinson combined for what is it here? Uh, Not very many points. I can't pull up the game, the full box for whatever.
I think it's probably
But
less than 15 combined.
yeah, you're not going to win many games like that. You're just not.
I think it feels like to me that everybody's kind of taken a back seat. Like you're right, it does feel like that with Hunter. Like everyone feels a little less assertive than they should be. Like, aside from Dewan, Dewan's letting the thing go this
which
year.
we've never seen before, which
It's
is a
like,
good
okay,
sign.
Dewan, somebody's got to step up and do it. Somebody's got to do it. But somebody's got to do it. Somebody's got to step up and be like, okay, this is my team. Because the good part about this is it's after a loss of like, okay, throw out everything we've been doing. We just lost. What are we going to change right now? I hope Bill looks at this and he's like, hey, I need a guy. Who's going to be Hunter? You want to be the guy this year? If you don't, that's fine, but you got to let me know so we can get another guy. And nobody seems to be taking the mantle right now. And that I think that's the thing to watch going forward.
I'll say this, and then we'll go into some positives from this game. Kansas KenPom numbers have taken a little bit of a turn. The offensive rating is now 17th in the country, and the defensive rating has moved to 7th. So that's kind of flip-flopped a little bit, I believe, from the last time we talked about it. And we also talked about how this team is probably going to be one of those teams that has a better offensive efficiency than defensive efficiency. Haven't seen that so far. That's pretty interesting. I'm interested to see as Kansas goes into conference play, kind of how those numbers shape up. But let's get into some positives, Bez. And here's my positive from this game. Kansas isn't the only top team that lost this week. Okay.
Mm,
You
right.
got Auburn losing to Duke. You got Marquette losing to Iowa State. I know that's those teams are, top 10 teams, maybe even top 5 teams in the country, Duke and Marquette. But they lost, or sorry, Auburn and Marquette, but they lost. And then Purdue also lost last night to Penn State. They got beat pretty bad by Penn
Yeah.
State. So Kansas ain't the only team that's losing this week. So maybe let's take a little bit of a chill pill. Teams lose. Teams lose games throughout the season, especially to other good teams like Creighton, especially sometimes on the road. So again, I'm not super concerned about this Creighton loss. I think there's a lot of teaching moments.
I'm not concerned at all. I think I said last episode I had this as a loss before the season started when we were doing our. So you take it on the chin. That's a tough matchup, man. Midweek in Omaha, it's freezing up here in Ames, Iowa, and Omaha is pretty close. So I'm sure it's freezing. Like it is freezing, dude. It's like 5 degrees right now here. I'm not
That,
feeling it.
that Creighton team was desperate for a win, like they
That's
were.
their game. That was one of the 5 best games they'll play all year. Kansas has got a whole Big 12 schedule to look forward to. So the game meant something different. McDermott's record against Self is terrible. So, that's they had that circled. So straight up. That's all right. I'm not worried.
Yeah. Yep. Creighton needed that one. Kansas again. Whenever you get kind of I watched the Burner Ball episode on this game. Kevin Sweeney said the kitchen sink. Creighton just threw the kitchen sink at Kansas, and now we kind of the Jayhawks. I think a positive of that is now they know like, hey, teams might do this to us. Teams might just completely sag off Dewan and KJ. What are we gonna do when that
Mm,
happens? I think it's a really good teaching moment
mm.
for Kansas. So thank you, Greg McDermott. Thank you for doing that to us and kind of letting us see what's going on. All right, that is all we have for this opening, talking about Creighton, Kansas's first loss of the season. Jayhawks now 7-1, and we'll head to Columbia on Sunday. We're going to talk about that game coming right up next.
There is no sport in America that is more difficult to follow than college basketball. It can be overwhelming. That's where the Field of 68 Daily comes into play. The Daily is your go-to source for injury updates, recruiting news, and transfer portal additions that actually matter. For just $50 a year, get access to the same information that your favorite team's coaching staff is subscribed for. Quality content can be hard to find in the college basketball space. The Daily is here to help you with that.
Welcome back, everybody, to The Hum, a Kansas Hoops podcast via the Field of 68. We are now here to talk a little bit of Missouri, a little border war, a little rivalry showdown for Kansas. Second road game in a row and second true road game of the season for Kansas. It should be a raucous environment at Mizzou. I'll be there. It's going to be a great game. And another positive, we kind of came into this talking about the positives from the Creighton game. And I think this might be another positive. I saw this on Twitter. I don't know exactly who said it, but pretty much somebody was like, well, now Mizzou gets a pissed off Kansas whenever they come into town, and, they'll probably stomp them. So, yes, Mizzou will be getting a Kansas team that is not too happy about suffering their first loss. I still don't think, Bez, it's going to be as easy as it has been in recent years to get a win. Missouri is 7-1. They lost to Memphis on opening night, 83-75. Memphis, pretty good team this year. And besides that, there's really not much to take away because they played pretty much nobody. Every single team besides Cal, which is number 113 in KenPom, every other team that Mizzou has played is outside the top 240 of KenPom. So they played a lot of nobodies. They just
amazing.
beat Cal 98-93 heading into this game. KenPom projects a 79-74 Kansas win in this one. And one thing to note about Mizzou, they go deep. They got 10 to 12 guys who have logged some decent minutes this year, and they don't have a single player averaging above 25 minutes per game. Some very interesting stuff here.
That's truly amazing by Dennis Gates that you can schedule 7 of the country's 100 worst teams in a 3-week span. Props to Dennis Gates for getting that done. Very impressive. Don't get it twisted. Cal was winning the whole game against Mizzou. If Kansas loses this, I'm sounding the alarms and freaking out because this would be an awful, awful, awful loss. You got to go. If this is not a double-digit win, I'd count it as a loss. That's where I'm at mentally with this game.
It wouldn't be a terrible loss. Mizzou is, I think, 61. Mizzou is 61 in KenPom right now, which that's not terrible. That would be one of the better teams in the SEC, I believe. Or actually, no, the SEC is loaded. That would put them around 12 in the SEC this year. But yeah, it's just an interesting team. Just looking at the numbers, it's hard to get a gauge on these guys. They're starting 5 right now. Seems to be Anthony Robinson, Tamar Bates, Mark Mitchell, Anor Boateng, and then Josh Gray, a 7-footer at 260 pounds. But Josh Gray only plays like 12 minutes a game. Caleb Grill, he suffered an injury against Lindenwood, and he is wearing a neck brace, and he looks to be day-to-day. As a couple of days ago, we saw a report on that. I'm not sure if Caleb Grill will play in this game. And then you got Tony Perkins, Marquess Warwick, and Aiden Shaw all kind of coming off the bench there. If you're familiar with Iowa, you probably know Tony Perkins. He's a transfer there. Mark Mitchell, of course, a transfer from Duke. And then Tamar Bates transferred from Indiana a couple years ago. I think Mitchell and Bates, that's kind of the 2 guys to really look out for here in this game. Those guys are averaging above 12 points per game for Missouri. They're kind of their wing guys, the lefties. I think if Kansas slows down Mitchell and Bates, it's going to be really, really hard for Mizzou to win this game.
Yeah, 100%. And we have a built-in Mark Mitchell stopper and KJ Adams, so I'm not even worried about Mark Mitchell at all. Dude, Caleb Grill injury was scary. So Caleb, get better. That was a crazy one. It's crazy that he's day to day. If you've seen that video, anybody out there, he's actually day to day, and he's walking around with the team at practice. He's just got a brace on his neck. That's pretty wild from that video of what I saw. That was a scary injury. But yeah, he's their leading scorer. We're probably not going to see him. So you're really relying on these other guys that are come from schools that were better and they didn't play super great, and now they're here trying to revive their careers, and Kansas needs to step on their throats and beat them by 15.
Yeah, I'm sorry, but no disrespect to Mizzou, having Caleb Grill as your leading scorer isn't a great positive sign for your team's success. So they do balance it out a lot. Perkins is their 6th leading scorer at 8 points a game. So they kind of balance it out a little bit, but let's do some predictions, Bez. I think Kansas rolls 88-72 in this game. And since the border war started, The first year it was back in what was that, 2021, 22, right? Or no, 20.
Home game was the first one, 2021, 2022 season.
Yes. That
Yeah,
game was
yeah, it was
102 to
championship year.
65.
Yeah,
Kansas absolutely walloped them. Then the one on the road the next year, it was 96-67 Kansas. And then I
actually,
don't remember the game at home being this close last year, but I guess it was. It
I
was
do.
3-64.
It didn't feel close the whole time, but it was just kind of it was annoying that they were just hanging around because they weren't very good last year either, but neither was Kansas. So I got 85-68. Mizzou's not getting 70. They might not get 65, but I'll go 85-68.
All right. There you have it, y'all. A little quick uh, roundup of what's going on versus Mizzou. Bez, after we record this, I'm heading to Kentucky. I'm
Hmm.
going to see Darren Peterson, and I'm going to see him play AJ Dybansta, a little battle of the number one player versus the number two player via ESPN's newest rankings. Look out for a story from me on Darren Peterson. AJ Dybansta also included Kansas in his top four. And not only did him including Kansas in his top seven to begin with surprise people, having Kansas in the top four is even more surprising. So we're going to poke around and see if there's anything there with that.
Oh
That's all
yeah.
I have for you today, y'all. I
Yep.
appreciate you guys for watching. And again, episode 50. Can't believe it, Bez. I just can't
50
believe it.
apps. Let's get to 75. Next milestone. Let's get there.
And then after that, let's get to 100.
Let's
Might as
just do
well.
it.
Might
Let's
as
do
well. We're halfway there. All right, y'all. Have a good one.